Good afternoon, and thanks for coming. Today we're going to be talking about Texas Educators Ethic Training. But really, honestly, you could probably do this within law enforcement or anywhere else that you're working with individuals and students and kids and adults, and because this is across the board. You can do it with anything, but this is the role of administrators in the prevention, but not only prevention, the intervention with inappropriate behavior. The inappropriate behavior can be with anybody, with anything. So we're going to talk about a few things, and we're going to go over a couple things, and I hope y'all participate in this presentation. Next slide. All right, describe a role of an administrator in prevention, intervention, and inappropriate behavior. What could this possibly be? Well, there's a few things that this could possibly be, and it could be social media, working with individuals, working with kids, getting their phone numbers, the way you talk to them, the way you look at them. This also could be in the workplace, and it could be how you just talking with other people in your groups. The water fountain, talking at the water fountain, those things could also happen. But also, how do I integrate with other people? How do I talk to them? How do I talk to the opposite sex? And in today's society, it could be with male to male or female to female. So those are the things we're going to talk about: the prevention, intervention, and the inappropriate behaviors that we have seen and we are seeing today as it grows. Next slide. Okay, stimulating thoughts. What is the role of administrator in the prevention of inappropriate behavior? That's number one. Two is how can teachers and staff support them in this endeavor? What do you think on that first one? What do you think that possibly could be a prevention or intervention?
Having a better way for students to communicate with teachers other than, so that way teachers don't have a way to for students, they don't have to get teachers' phone numbers to be able to communicate or anything like that.
Okay.
So having a way where they can effectively communicate with them without having, and there's a in between, so like maybe a messenger for an app.
An app, correct.
Some type of messenger, so that way administrators can have a way to look at the messages that students are saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. What about in the private sector or in your field, law enforcement? How could that be attributed to that, or how could you look at it in that situation?
To have prevention and intervention for inappropriate behaviors. The way we do is, to prevent and have any inappropriate behaviors, we do take classes on that type of stuff, and we also are always having body cams anytime we interact with any type of civilian or anything like that.
So y'all have to be very careful on what y'all do and what you say and how you say it.
Mm-hmm.
What about on the education side? What about that? What can we do? How can teachers and staff support them? How can we do that?
I guess probably finding out what the issues are and then asking questions to find out what teachers' specific needs are.
Okay.
That way they can know what we're trying to fix in the first place.
So who would be responsible for this on the teacher side, on the education side? Administrators? Is it only administrators, or can anybody do this?
I think it's everybody.
Correct, and I agree with you. It's anybody and everybody. Coaches, teachers, custodian, lunchroom staff, facility staff. It can be anybody across the board. How can we train individuals to keep from doing and supporting and the prevention and intervention of inappropriate behavior? All right, next slide. All right, go ahead. Understanding how districts and campus leaders develop an ethical culture. This is something that hopefully, as you're growing as an educator or in any other field, you're putting this together. The thought, the process, things that happen in our society. You look at things and you want to stay away from those slippery slopes, as we call it, but definitely you want to make sure that you identify and to prevent these strategies like inappropriate behavior and identifying methods of intervening. So the observing, reporting inappropriate behavior. I'll give you an example. At a school that I was at, we had a teacher, a coach, and a student having inappropriate behavior. I was on a walk with my wife, and we ended up witnessing this. We looked at it. There was no hugging or kissing, but I just thought, hey, I said, hey, Rosie, look, this looks a little strange. What do you think? And sure enough, she thought the same thing as I did. Now, it was more of a flirtatious, but it was more of a boyfriend and a girlfriend walking and joking and doing those things. It wasn't a coach. It wasn't a professional with a student. So those things that we identified, I reported it, and sure enough, it was investigated and the teacher was arrested. So those are things that we have to look at, make sure we report that inappropriate behavior. Otherwise, it will continue on. Next slide. How often do we read, see your newspaper stories? And we see this all the time on the news, right? We see this all the time. We see things going on. What is the latest one that y'all know of right now that's happened? There was an athletic director in Perryton. We saw that. We those things happen. Now he's doing time. In my last school, we had 3 types of things going on. There's other places you can pull up right now on the internet, and you can look at inappropriate relations with students or the teacher or whatever, and I guarantee you're going to find something. You'll find something on that particular thing. Do you mind, sir over here? Do you mind reading that one over on the 14-year-old student?
A 14-year-old student wrote his cell number on a classroom chalkboard because he wanted a classmate he liked to call. The student was contacted, not by the girl, but by his 32-year-old teacher within days. The two were involved in a sexual relationship.
Anything wrong with that? What was the first thing that came to your mind?
Student writing his personal phone number on the chalkboard.
Yeah. Is that something that should be taking place in your classroom?
No.
No, that's something that an administrator or somebody should pick up right away. So giving out your phone number or the student giving you your phone number, that's inappropriate. I wouldn't be giving anybody my phone number because things will happen. Things will come back to bite you later on. Go ahead and go to the next one. Do you mind reading that one?
A 33-year-old teacher began flirting with a 17-year-old student at a school dance. The teacher then sent the student text, photos, and a video of herself performing lewd acts. The relationship escalated. The teacher pleaded guilty to sexual assault.
Pleaded guilty. We have evidence. Evidence is going to kill you every time. Text, photos, video, performing lewd acts. How can we get away from those things? How do we identify it? How can we prevent them? There's a mitigating thing that we can do. Following instructions, again, those slippery slopes that you are going to come across are going to be vital to you in your careers, whether you're in education, law enforcement, or in a corporate society. All right. So a 54-year-old teacher exchanged more than 1,800 text messages with a student, many of them sexually explicit, before the teacher was convicted and sentenced to prison. Well, that happens. Yeah, and it's going to happen. If we don't stop it, social media is going to be the death of us. It's going to be within that group, because if you start to perform those social exchanges, then you're going to be able to find out that something is definitely wrong, and it's going to catch up to you. Nothing can be hidden. Next slide. In 2015, Washington Post, Texas is the home of the largest, now listen to this, Texas is the home of the largest number of teachers of sexual misconduct cases in the country. Investigations into alleged inappropriate teacher-student relations has grown 27% over the past 3 years. Why? Why do you think this is happening? Why are we not catching it? If it's growing, we're doing something wrong. Why do you think this is going on?
Students having
I think the access to technology is a big one. Everything can be hidden due to like Snapchat or Instagram or anything like that. So I feel like teachers or students feel like it's easier to hide relationships than it was in the past. But it's also easier to catch them.
Right. It really is. I mean, there's another incident that I was on being a school marshal or part of the safety, and that's another story. But we had this one student that was in the mess hall or the lunchroom, and she didn't know that her what is that on Apple phone that automatically goes over to somebody and you don't even realize it. Well, anyway, it happened, and it was sent to everybody that had an iPhone, or it was airdropped. It was airdropped, and it was her doing something that she probably should have been doing, or videotaping herself. So that was all out there. Then you have these situations like, if that person opens it up, then they're in trouble. If that person opens it up, then it's like a chain reaction where they're going on and on and on. We have to be cognizant of how we do this and how we mitigate the circumstances of inappropriate relationships. Next slide. Let's see, what strategies could we, could these districts and campuses have implemented to prevent this from happening? We discussed it a while ago, and those are having those trainings. I think trainings are very important to have when you're dealing with a staff. They have to know, because sometimes I think those staff members, or even the police officers or in the corporate world, they don't understand how those things can be misconstrued in a manner. Maybe looking at somebody in a pretty dress as they're walking by, that's inappropriate. I mean, you're gawking at them, or how you might say something to them that verbally that you didn't think it was. So being trained on this, but also how we're raised. I think that's having a lot to do with it. When you're raised in a situation where I think that if you're raised in a Christian environment or whatever the case may be, and sometimes you're not lucky to have that, but nevertheless things will take place where you have those ethics and those moral values that you're going to grow up with. I know that in my household, of a family of 13, my mom and dad definitely instilled those values, and being 10 boys and 3 girls, but 10 boys, we can get pretty rowdy and do some things that we're not supposed to. But yeah, definitely, my dad put us in line. Okay, I have a short video here that's going to go over some things, and after it's over, we'll talk about it. But we're going to look at this, and it's going to be a couple administrators and then one facilitating the meeting.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for this discussion on the administrator role in the prevention of and intervention in instances of inappropriate behavior. I'm joined today by 2 principals from school districts here in Texas. School leadership has been identified as one of the most important elements of an effective school system. As you know, the principal oversees the daily operation of the campus, the instructional program, and providing a vision and direction for the campus. Simply stated, the principal develops the culture of the campus. Can a campus leader develop a culture that models positive ethical behavior? Let's begin our dialogue with the topic of prevention. What are some strategies that you, as campus leaders, utilize to prevent inappropriate behavior at your campuses?
I think this is a conversation that is certainly timely and so very relevant. As you know, the role of a campus leader is multifaceted. This is an area that sometimes gets placed a little bit further down on the list of things to do. At our campus, we have certainly moved it to the top of the list. We've done that primarily with proper ethics training. Teachers have an opportunity to discuss this important issue. And lastly, we also try to build an ethical culture by stressing transparency, openness, and communication. Professionalism is not only expected, but it is required at our campus.
How do you address the topic of prevention at your campus?
Well, I believe it's critical to have frequent conversations about ethics. We don't merely talk about it at the beginning of the school year, but rather all through the year. We strive to hire the right people for our campus, and we create strong policies and practices that focus on defining, identifying, and reporting inappropriate behavior. We also include our parents and make sure they're familiar with our policies and expectations, especially in the area of educator-student relationships. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my role and the importance of walking the talk. It's a tremendous responsibility.
What type of guidelines do you have for teachers to follow concerning communication expectations with students?
Communication is very important, but professional communication is a must. The adults at our campus are reminded to communicate in a formal manner, both verbally and in written form. We have also included in our guidelines that personal communication is not allowed with students. Social media has made our lives easier in some ways, but more complicated in other ways. Nothing is temporary. If it is written forever.
We've also provided clear guidelines for all adults in our school. For example, we don't allow texting unless it's from a school-wide texting system. We also have a social media acceptable use policy. The policy clearly states that there will be no personal social media account used to communicate with students. Educators appreciate clear guidelines.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, now let's move to the second topic, which focuses on intervention strategies. How do you intervene when inappropriate behavior has occurred by one of your staff members?
Well, we have utilized many prevention strategies, primarily through training. We place a great amount of importance on timely intervention. It is so important to respond immediately once you are notified of inappropriate behavior. The safety of the students must be our priority. Depending on the level of the violation, conferencing, reporting if necessary, follow-up, and monitoring of the situation is critically important.
All of those are very important points. I would only add that the incident needs to be carefully documented from the beginning of the incident to the monitoring for years to come. It's also important to remember that the parents need to be contacted immediately. They cannot, should not be left out of the situation. Lastly, but just as critically, the superintendent needs to be apprised immediately of the entire situation.
What advice would you give your staff regarding appropriate behavior in the workplace?
The advice I would give my staff is that they are role models and mentors for the students, as well as educators who meet the needs of the students at the highest level of quality. Do the right thing. Be a teacher, not a friend. Educators are held at a higher standard whether we like it or not. We must always keep that in mind.
Well said. My advice to staff would be to always use good judgment and common sense when interacting with students. Be a hero. Always remember your position and responsibility in this profession. It's one of authority and power. Use it in a positive and supportive manner for the betterment of all students.
Great advice. Your expertise is greatly appreciated. Research continues to indicate that prevention is the key to diminishing the number of ethical violations. Key questions to ask are, what type of training does the district and the campus provide to gain a better understanding of inappropriate behavior? What policies and/or procedures do we have in place to clarify the district expectation for educators in this district? How can I make sure that I am aware of the ramifications that accompany boundary violations? The information you have shared will be important reminders for all administrators and staff members. Thank you for being with us today and sharing your practices on building an ethical culture. It is critical to ensure a safe and secure learning environment for our students. And thank you to all adults in our public schools who place the needs of our students above all else.
All right. So what do you think some of the key words that they used in describing the mitigation process? What do you think? What were some key words?
Prevention.
Prevention, communication. What are some others? There was one big one at the end. The lady, the older lady, said something. He goes, and this, I believe, we're dealing this with younger teachers and younger coaches who sometimes they don't realize what they're doing.
That they need to be a leader, not a friend.
Not a friend, exactly. And that's correct. I mean, I think that's how it started with the situations that I had at my last school where they wanted to be friends. Coaching, you can't be friends. Administrators, I had one student come up to me and tell me, so we're buds, right? And I said, nope, no, we're not. I said, I'm your principal. I'm not your friend. I said, but I will take care of you. I'll make sure you get educated. I'll make sure that things are going to happen for you and you're safe and you're in a productive learning environment. But I'm not your friend. So you have to make those things clear, even though it might sound a little abrasive, but those things have to happen. Those things have to take place. What else did y'all hear that was a key point about that? Other than the communication and not being a friend or
Creating just boundaries.
creating boundaries, but there was a talk about culture, about having a culture environment, putting that in there. What type of culture or what type of climate? These are two different animals here, culture and climate. So what type of culture and climate do you think would need to be done? What kind of culture would need to be placed in a district or in a campus level?
Culture of professionalism.
Professionalism, right? What else? What do y'all think? What do y'all think about something that's inviting? More parents coming in, being involved, talking to other teachers and creating a culture of learning, of being from bell to bell, having not any kind of wait time or anything that's having them to create something from texting, across. We pick up phones. We pick up phones so they don't have any phones. I think that's a great idea because it's the root of all evil. If you have a kid with a phone and is in the classroom and not using it for like bring your own technology today, then you're going to have a problem because they're going to be texting their friends or they're going to be texting somebody at home or something to that effect. But there are several things that you can create in a school district that is going to be conducive. Now, there was something else that these individuals, these administrators mentioned, and it was about notification. Or if you see something, say something, stop it, create it. And then there was something very, very important that anybody, doesn't matter whether you're an educator or in the private sector or an officer, a law enforcement officer, there's something very important when you have that because you do it every day. You see something and you have a traffic stop, you have to do something at the end of the day. You pull somebody over drinking and driving, you have to do something at the end of the day or after that arrest. Document. You got to document like crazy. I don't care where you're at. You have to document like you would not believe. And be specific. And don't use any pronouns. You want to use names. You want to use dates. You want to use times. You want to make sure that you're getting everything because it will save your career. All right. Got ethics. Next slide. Building and maintaining educator ethics. Addressing inappropriate behavior should be a proactive, not reactive. What does that mean? Proactive and reactive? What are they talking about there?
Well, I know in policing, we're mainly a reactive type of officers just because we go when a crime happens. So as much as we would like to be proactive, which we do, we try to be proactive, but we can't do a whole lot unless something has already happened. So proactive means you're going out there looking for stuff, whereas reactive, you're reacting to something that's already happened.
Something that's already happened. How is that in the educational world? What do you think about that? Well, tell me, what do you think the difference is between being reactive and proactive? He might have just mentioned it just a while ago, but how does that happen in the educational world?
Just having strict guidelines in your classrooms,
Right.
And having strict guidelines of your relationship between you and your students, and also having an understanding of being aware of your surroundings, and if you see something, say something kind of deal,
Right.
rather than reacting to a situation before it gets out of hand.
Before it gets out of hand. So we're talking about prevention, intervention, mitigation. This is very involved in it. Being proactive and reactive on the situations. When I saw something that was happening, I reported it, and sure enough, it came to be something. All right, next slide. building and maintaining educator ethics, right and wrong. We all know what right and wrong is. Being an educator in law enforcement, you know that I can't go up there and just take anything off the shelf because I police the city. I'm gonna take this. Yeah, I got my freebie today. Or as an educator, you see something, you say something. You know what's right, what's wrong. How do I talk to that student? Do I